Frontline is made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Tonight in Iraq, coalition forces have advanced to within 10 miles of the center of Baghdad. But the United States and Great Britain are still isolated, fighting the war with little international help. And they face a tide of public rage in Muslim countries, in Europe, and around the world. Tonight on Frontline, the story of why America and Britain find themselves going it alone.
Saddam Hussein will be removed no matter how long it takes.
It is the story of a political battle between old allies.
It is not to one country to decide. We need facts.
And the story of a man of Europe, caught in the middle, risking his political future by supporting Washington.
Sometimes unpopularity is the price of leadership, and it is the cost of conviction.
Tonight, the inside story of Tony Blair's war.
In the dark days after September 11th, British Prime Minister Tony Blair came to New York to mourn those who had died at the World Trade Center and to express his country's solidarity with the United States.
After the terrible events of last week, there is the determination to build hope out of tragedy. There is the surging of the human spirit.
That afternoon, Blair was scheduled to meet with President Bush at the White House. On the official agenda, America's plans to attack al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
We stand side by side with you now. Your loss we count as our loss. Your struggle we take as our struggle.
But in Washington, another issue, one that would eventually tear apart the Western alliance, was already in play: Iraq.
In the Bush administration before 9/11, they're not paying much attention to Iraq, with one important exception. In the Defense Department, Paul Wolfowitz, a neoconservative, is consistently agitating to do something to take out Saddam. At Camp David, the weekend after 9/11, Wolfowitz is right there saying, let's go. I mean, literally right there. And the president, in a fundamental way, made up his mind on about September 12th, 2001, that Iraq was something he was going to eventually deal with.
When Tony Blair arrived at the White House, he entered the debate on Iraq.
We finally got to the White House after this very emotional morning.
It's my honor to welcome my friend and a friend to America, our Prime Minister Tony Blair, to the White House.
One of the issues was, were the Americans going to use 9/11 quite apart from hunting down al-Qaeda, to go after Iraq as well. And Tony Blair's view was, whatever you're going to do about Iraq, you should concentrate on the job at hand. And the job at hand was get al-Qaeda, give the Taliban an ultimatum. The president took Blair and moved him off into the corner of the room. And he said, I agree with you, Iraq, we keep for another day.
America has no truer friend than Great Britain. So honored the British Prime Minister has crossed an ocean to show his unity with America. Thank you for coming, friend.
Britain had been consecrated as the closest ally, and Blair and Bush were, if you like, two leaders in harness, about, together with whoever else was going to join them, to slay the dragon of international terrorism.
In Paris and throughout Europe, solidarity with America also seemed to run deep.
The reaction here was really phenomenal. Taxi drivers would ask me, because they could hear my accent in French, where are you from? And I'd say the United States. And they'd immediately say, oh, I feel so sorry about what happened. There was this huge outpouring. I remember the Le Monde headline was something like, we are all Americans now.
Le peuple français, je tiens à le dire ici, tout entier, est aux côtés du peuple américain. Il lui exprime son amitié et sa solidarité dans cette tragédie. J'assure naturellement le président George Bush de mon soutien total.
From its headquarters in Belgium, NATO offered America European soldiers to fight in the coming war in Afghanistan.
This attack shall be regarded as an action covered by Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which states that an armed attack against one or more of the Allies in Europe or in North America shall be considered an attack against them all.
Well, the Americans said, thank you, we are very busy now, we are in the shock, thank you, we will call you later.
Eventually, Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz arrived at NATO to give the administration's response.
I mean, we think we had a collective affirmation of support with what they said with Article 5, and if we need collective action, we'll ask for it. We can't anticipate that at the moment.
So America prepared for war in Afghanistan on its own terms. The administration did not want to relive the U.S. military's frustrating experience with NATO during the Kosovo conflict.
The sense in the Bush administration was, we don't want to have to do what the Clinton administration did in Kosovo, collective decision over bombing targets. And that's why I think the U.S. basically said, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to fight the war in Afghanistan on our own. We'll do it our way. And then after the main fighting was over, then they said to the EU, come on in, help us with the peacekeeping. And I think that has left a bad taste in the mouths of many Europeans.
America fought the war against the Taliban virtually alone. Its rejection of NATO's help began to erode French solidarity.
The reaction of the Americans was close to contemptuous. So I think this was a bad signal. And clearly it played a role, I think, in what happened after that.
What we have found in Afghanistan confirms our war against terror is only beginning.
After his victory over the Taliban, President Bush suddenly expanded the list of America's enemies, from states who support terrorists to those developing weapons of mass destruction.
North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction while starving its citizens. Iran aggressively pursues these weapons and exports terror. Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
Americans understood immediately what George Bush meant by the axis of evil. Because Americans don't mind thinking of the world in terms of good and evil. In fact, they frequently do think of the world in terms of good and evil. Now, of course, the reaction in Europe was entirely different. I think many Europeans were sort of stunned and perhaps even horrified by that speech.
The French Foreign Ministry said it was a simplistic description of the situation. People were sort of afraid of introducing this religious language in the political landscape. Maybe they're cynical, maybe they are realistic, but that kind of language is sounds very odd for us, very bizarre, and it does not cross well the ocean.